All right, I think this is active now. So my name is Zach Kennedy. I was signed up to present exercise 5. I wasn't sure if it was in homework number 1 or homework number 2, so I chose homework number 1. So hopefully this is the problem I was supposed to present. So just you can hear. Hopefully you can see my screen. Yeah, so exercise 3/5 gives you the tabular analysis of all the transactions for August 2017 by Sandhill. And so going down to the first part of the problem, it asks you to fill out the income statement. And so the income statement is always for the year. And so that's how you know it's going to be for the month ended August 31st, 2017. And the income statement will always go from revenues listed first, then the list of all the expenses. So just starting off with the revenues, if you scroll up here, there's only one type of revenue listed, and there's just the service revenue, and you can see it's listed at the 10,300. So scroll on down, so that's what I put there as a 10,300 for the service revenue. And moving on to expenses, so the first one listed is the salaries and the wages expenses, the rent expense, and the utilities expense. And so I was able to find these up here, just under expenses. You move on down, I was able to find the rent, the salary, and the utilities. And so I'll always post those just in the order from the greatest value to the least. So we were able to list that as the salaries expense at $3,800, at $3,800. The rent expense at $760, and the utilities at $390. And so as you can see right there, I put them all in the same order right there. And so all of those expenses were listed just in that order from greatest value to least value. And then you're able to add all those together, 3,800, 760, 390 to come to total expenses of 4,950. And then to get your net income, you're going to want to take your total revenue and then subtract your total expenses. So the 10,300, and then you subtract from it the 4,950 to get a total of 5,350 for a net income. And then moving on to the next portion of the problem, it asks you to come up with a retained earnings statement. So you always want to start off with, and starting off, you always see that it's for the month ended as well, because they want to see what the retained earnings is after the period is over. And so you always start off with the retained earnings at the beginning. It says up here that it was their first month of operations. And so, you know, that they're obviously going to start off with $0 coming off of August 1st, since it was their first month starting up. And you'll want to go ahead and show what the increases in retained earnings were first, which, if we refer to the first part of the problem, was 5,350 right there. And so the 0 plus the 5,350 net income for the month of August brings us to a total of 5,350 for the time being. And then you include anything that's going to subtract from your retained earnings. And so up here, you'll see, going from the retained earnings section, the only thing that's going to take away from that is specifically the dividends, $2,600. And so you'll take that 5,350 and minus the $2,600 for the dividends, and then that'll give you your total for the retained earnings for the month ended August 31st, 2,750. And we were able to move on to section C, and it asks you to create a balance sheet. And a balance sheet is always just referring to a single point in time. And so we're just going to put August 31st, 2017 instead of month ended or year ended, anything like that. And so you're going to start off with your current assets, which, if we scroll back up to the top, you're able to see all of your current assets are cash, accounts receivable, and supplies. You always want to list those in the order of their liquidity or the order that they can be converted into cash the easiest. And conveniently, they are placed in order there for you. So cash, it's already converted. And then you'd expect to receive on those accounts receivable next. And then the supplies will eventually turn into cash. And equipment will go inside a separate section we'll get to here in a little bit. And so first off, starting with the cash, this is for the period where it's ended, so August 31st. And so you'll start off with a $23,700, and you'll want to go down the list and include all of these events to get your total what the cash balance would be for your current assets. So the $23,700 minus 1,780 minus 730 plus 4,000 minus 2,400 minus 2,600 minus 760 plus 460 minus 3,800 gives you a total of 16,090. So that would be your current asset of cash. There's a total of 16,090. Then moving on to accounts receivable, you can see that we've got the 6,300 and then the minus 460 there. And so with both of those put together, it's going to take you to 5,840. And again, you got that by starting with a 6,300 and subtracting the 460 from that later event. Moving on to the next, we'll take a look at supplies. Moving up here, there's supplies and there's no change in that anywhere. So that's just going to be $730 there on your balance sheet. And so then you'll want to go ahead and take a total of what your current assets are. So the 16,090 plus the 5,840 plus 730 is going to give you a total of 22,660. So the next thing that we need to list is the last thing that was listed as an asset on that sheet that we were given, which is equipment. And so going back up here, you can see equipment. There's just $5,080 worth of equipment. There's no changes in it before or after. And so you just transfer that number, 5,080, directly to here, directly for your equipment. And so there's only two types of assets here. There's equipment and there's all your total current assets. And so you'll add the 22,660 for your total current assets to the 5,080 for your equipment. And that gives you a total of 27,740. So you've already got your total assets there. And then moving on to the liabilities and stockholders equity section, you'll start off with the current liabilities, which when you take a look at it, are just going to be those accounts payable. And so you start with the 3,300, and then that changes a little bit later on. So you subtract it from 2,400, or you start with 3,300, you subtract 2,400 from that, and then you add 390, which is then able to give you 1,290. And so since that's all of your current liabilities, you then move on to stockholders' equity. It's very nice the way this is set up, is it's easy to kind of find out what all would be included in there. So you see the stockholders' equity, and then you can see there's the retained earnings and what that makes up. And so going down, you're going to look at stockholders' equity. So there's two things that will make that up are your retained earnings and your common stock. So you list your common stock first, which when you go up here, it's 23,700. So you just transfer that right there. And the retained earnings is here. So you can actually just go back to the retained earnings that you had up above for that second part of the problem that you completed. It's 2,750. So you transfer that down there. And so your total stockholders' equity will be adding the common stock 23,700 to the retained earnings, which is 2,750 to give you a total of 26,450. And then to get your total liability and stockholders' equity for this section, you would just add the two together. So the 1,290 for the current liabilities, to the total stockholders' equity, the 26,450, give you a total of 27,740. And a way to check if that's accurate is if it matches up with your total assets, which it does. All right, I know I ran through it kind of fast. It was a little jumbled. But if you have any questions or you need more clarification, definitely let me know. I'll just be responding to everyone's posts just as they come through the next several days all the way through Saturday. All right.